The broadcast is now starting. All attendees can now hear you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our second Voice of the Customer webinar series. My name is Bill Arcanati, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Confluence here at Atlassian in San Francisco. And today with us we have Nate Nash and Jay Hariani from BearingPoint. We're excited to have them today. I'll introduce them in just a minute. First, I want to cover just a few logistics. So, as I mentioned, this is part of the Voice of the Customer webinar series that we just started last month in October. And it's a continuing series. In December, we'll have Joanna Thurman of Polycom talking about Jira. We have about 12,000 customers all across Atlassian. And so if you have ideas for future webinars or would like to maybe even be part of the webinar, please contact Morgan Freiberg at morgan@atlassian.com. And to find out about future upcoming webinars that we have, you can go to this link here that you see at the bottom, atlassian.com/about-events, voice of the customer.jsp. You can also view past webinars through our website at atlassian.com/tv. So this webinar will probably be up later on, maybe tomorrow or toward the end of the week. In terms of format, I think Jay and Nate have about 30 minutes of content, and then we want to turn it over for Q&A because we want to make this as interactive as possible. So as you have questions, feel free to type into the question on the question section of your control panel there, and we'll be aggregating them here and then pose those questions to Nate and Jay after they're finished speaking. So with that, I want to give a little context behind Nate and Jay's presentation. There are a few reasons that we thought it'd be interesting for them to come and talk to you today about their Confluence, their use of Confluence. One is that we have customers ranging in size from really small, 25, 10-person teams, all the way up to hundreds of thousands of users at some of our larger deployments. But one thing that all of those deployments have in common is that Confluence is being used to enable and empower small teams to work together and share content. And I think that BearingPoint is a really good example of that. Another thing about wikis also that I think BearingPoint embodies is that all successful wiki adoptions, most successful wiki adoptions, whether it's small organizations or really large organizations, are driven as a grassroots kind of ground-up effort by some really passionate wiki evangelists, and I think Nate and Jay are also really good examples of wiki evangelists, wiki champions within BearingPoint. And then thirdly, I think BearingPoint is an interesting example because while most of us probably sit in an office all day, I know I do, they are using Confluence in situations where others might typically think. So they're using it in hostile situations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I know that Nate and Jay have been traveling the globe to some interesting places like Amman, Jordan, Jakarta, and most recently I believe it was Afghanistan. So they have some interesting stories about how they use Confluence in situations that we might not have ever thought of. So with that, what I'd like to do is just turn it over to Nate and Jay and let them talk about their role and how they use Confluence at BearingPoint.
Great. Thanks much. And good control of the slide deck here. We'll bring up the slides. And just first off, wanted to thank Atlassian for giving us the opportunity to do this. We're excited to tell our story. And we're excited about wikis in general and sort of overarching the Enterprise 2.0 theme. I promise I won't slide deck you to death, but we wanted to run through just a few quick slides and dive into kind of a demonstration of how we use Confluence as well as Jira and Crowd at BearingPoint. So the reason we call this deck Shifting Thousands is that was kind of the mission that Jay and I set out on a couple years ago. So we've got thousands of people that work here, and we really wanted to try and change the way they accomplished work. So it became less about, let's implement something that's a new place for people to put things, but let's implement something that is a new way for people to do things. So that's why we call this Shifting Thousands. Quick agenda, tell you who we are. We'll give you the wiki tale, kind of how we came to where we are today. Some vital signs, statistics around our current wiki implementation. Also want to give a bit of a shout out to the partners that helped us get there. And then we'll do some space exploration. We'll show you a live demo of our wiki in a couple of the spaces that we think are somewhat unique to BearingPoint and maybe can expand your mind on what wikis can be used for. Briefly go through lessons learned. Again, having sat through a lot of these, I don't want to spend too much time on methodology, but more about the demos and then getting into the Q&A. We'll give you our reference info again. So we are, or I am, Nate, and that's Jay sitting next to me. I think the best description of the two of us is that Jay is the steak and I'm the sizzle. So Jay has been responsible for a lot of the technical implementation elements of the Confluence Crowd and Jira install we have, and I've been responsible for sort of pushing adoption and trying to get it part of the BearingPoint baseline. We're both founding members of something we call the Enterprise 2.0 Capabilities Group that focuses on leveraging Enterprise 2.0 software, methodologies, approaches, and an overall mindset in our client spaces. And again, we both work for BearingPoint, which is a global management and technology consulting firm, roughly 16,000 headcount with offices all across the world. Those are our emails. Feel free to contact us after the presentation or anytime if you have questions about our Confluence implementation or anything relating to Enterprise 2.0. Or if you just want to chat, that's fine too. Briefly, a wiki tale. So how we got to where we are today, I think there's an important distinction, and it's a tale I think that is told often in the Enterprise 2.0 space, is that this wiki, that is now the BearingPoint Enterprise Wiki, deployed globally to all employees, was not necessarily started by the IT department. It was started by business users. Jay and I, we happen to do technology consulting as our day jobs. We may have had a bit of a leg up, but we started in the basement, essentially, hosting Confluence on a development license for the two of us on an old BearingPoint laptop we had, serving out over a cable modem, essentially. And one by one, user by user over time, really pushing the viral adoption hard as we could. We've now grown to a 2-node clustered instance of Confluence with, again, about 16,000 users, also using Crowd for single sign-on with our Active Directory, and Jira for task management and support of the wiki itself. One of the things we really like about our wiki implementation is that it was virally grown to achieve this critical mass before it received sort of executive endorsement and went forward. And we think that is, while sometimes risky from a, it perhaps might be a career-limiting move, the traction you get with the approach and then obviously the supporting software is really valuable. Really big into organic advocacy. So if you've ever read The Starfish and the Spider, it's about being a decentralized organization and taking, I don't own the wiki, I don't control sort of its advocacy any more than I do to just my close-knit network or my 1 degree of separation away from me. It morphs as it moves out across the organization and supports the needs of the users. And we really wanted innovation to be, kind of the slogan on the banner, if you will, not necessarily a goal. We weren't going to try to use this to achieve innovation. We were going to be innovative in the way that we used it. And hopefully that will show through in some of our demonstrations. But anyway, the key takeaway here is it was started by users for users. Obviously the IT department came on board later and have been very, very supportive ever since, and this would not have been a success without them, but it started on the business side. Quick vital signs. I mentioned that top bullet there is our current implementation, and that the next bullet's the amount of people we have across the globe using it. Current wiki pages, so this is instances of a wiki page. If you're familiar with Confluence, it has version control, so a single page could have multiple versions. We've got about 11,000 pages and 87,000 versions of those pages. 2,000 of those have comments. There are about 6,500 comments or so, and we've got about 2,000 unique page authors. which if you look at sort of adoption metrics and things like the 99-1 rule, we feel as if we've really been able to achieve beyond that ratio. And we're pretty proud of this. The bottom there is a link to a post on the BearingPoint corporate blog that gives these statistics, and if you think they're good or you think they're bad, feel free to comment there, and we'll respond. Quickly, I want to talk about a couple of the firms that helped us to get to where we are. Contigix, they host all of our entire Confluence, Crowd, and Jira installs, and they have been fantastic. I can't say enough good things about Contigix. Really great. If you're looking for someone to help you host Confluence, I highly recommend them. Then secondly is Customware. Customware is a custom plugin development shop. Rob Castaneda, his team has done some really great work for us. 4 specific plugins they built for us. One is a global system message plugin, which allows administrators to pop like an Ajax Lightbox up for users as they enter the system to say, you know, hey, it's Nate's birthday tomorrow, send him a gift, or something of more important nature. Finally, the auto user adder. What this does essentially is actually a crowd plugin. It allows us, as new users are added to our Active Directory, to automatically add them to the delegated authentication directory within Crowd and assign them to Confluence-users group and the Jira-users group, thus bypassing having to manually update the Crowd directory. It's a really good one for the administrative side. Space Archive plugin. Sort of trawl through spaces, periodic basis looking for, based on our parameters, things that haven't been viewed, updated, or edited in a while, and automatically moves them to an archive space. Restricted file types lets us obviously restrict file types that are uploaded as attachments. All right, let's get into the demonstration. So we're going to go through a few spaces, and if you have some questions, feel free to throw them in the chat log as we go through these spaces, and I'm more than happy to answer how we did it with what macros and what security restrictions, whatever you would like to, however detailed you would like to get. So first off, let's go into the Enterprise 2.0 capabilities group. So this is a use of the wiki to develop what we call a capabilities group. It's got some video there in the middle and some basic wiki functionality recently updated on the right, and some links and a tag kind of down at the bottom. The reason we think this is interesting is one, it's sort of, I guess, narcissistic in the fact that Jay and I started this group, and it's an attempt at bucking the trend or trying to do something different with the way solutions are developed within a consulting firm. So typically there's formal funding set aside, an organization is put together, relatively long process to get a solution, if you will, put together and content built around it. This capabilities group, because of the wiki, we've been able to develop content, respond to proposals, support engagements, and create value and revenue for our company without any formal funding, without any formal organization. It's completely organic. There's no limit on who can join or who can't join, who can contribute, who can't contribute. So we took this concept of a wiki and applied it to developing a product offering or solution for our firm. It's proven to be quite successful. We're pretty happy with it. Next, one of the things that was discussed earlier when we were being introduced is that BearingPoint does some work in some pretty difficult places. My day job is I'm part of a group called Emerging Markets, which specifically focuses on international development work, contracting with multilateral and unilateral donors like USAID, the World Bank, IMF, and that takes us to some pretty difficult places to work. In the past, what we have done, just to back up, when we send people to these places, it's important to know where those people are, what they're doing, what the country environment is like, in case something happens and we have to get them out in a relatively quick fashion, or we need to respond in any way. In the past, this was handled by sending around spreadsheets, uploading files to document repositories, emails, and was out of date. Didn't also provide, I think, a complete view of the information that was necessary to make sure our consultants out in the field were safe. So there was a team within BearingPoint, engagement security team, its job is solely focused on providing security information and in helping to ensure the safety of our advisors out in the field. To overcome this problem of very critical information being out of date, they created a couple spaces within the wiki. And the first one I'm showing you here is global intelligence. And what this is a nice little map. People can mouse over certain countries. These are all the countries we do work in. And they can get kind of the latest and greatest up-to-date information on the intelligence in that particular country. People who are in the country at the time can post news items. You get a little bit of that on-the-ground intelligence. We also aggregate various different U.S. government sources, any open source news we can find, to bring it all into this wiki environment, which, one, is easily accessible over the internet to our people who are out in the field, always up to date, and two, provides a feedback loop for things as they happen on the ground. So this gives us insight into what is going on in the countries that we work in, which is of critical importance to the safety of the people we have working there. But two, allows them to have access to that information as well. So we think this is a relatively interesting example, the use of a wiki to do this sort of thing. Another one that was done is the engagement security space. And what this does is it tracks personal information for our advisors who are out in the field. And the way this works is each person who's out in the field has a page. I'm going to go ahead. This is an example here. I can't show you any of the live data due to privacy concerns, but this is exactly what it would look like. So this is a country. Let's say, for example, Iraq. Down here on the right, we have a table of all the employees who are assigned to projects we have in Iraq. Each employee has a page. So BearingPoint is the first one here, and that essentially looks like this one right here. This is BearingPoint's page. You'll see it contains some personnel information about him, his in-country telephone information, the length of his assignment, start, end dates, travel information when he's leaving, next of kin information, and also evacuation tier information. All of this is critical to know about employees in the case of an event that happens, a security incident, where we need to understand where our people are, what they're doing, and what we need to do to help them, if anything. So each of those pages, and we use the metadata and metadata 2 plugins to generate some reports. This is a very and the checklist macro as well. This is a very sort of simple report of everyone that's there. You're able to switch the status of people very easily. We've disaggregated this out into the field offices as well, where they're able to update their own people simply and easily and give us the latest and greatest information. We also generate some reports. I'll show you here this is an example country status report, where we're generating who's in country, who's on R&R leave, who's out of country, and all of this is designed at being up to date and accurate information in case there is an event. So unfortunately, in some of these places, events do happen. So if there is some indirect fire, for example, that occurs in Iraq that might have an impact on our teams there, we're able to understand who's there, who's not, run head counts. If something more serious was to happen, such as a security event that required an evacuation, we're able to run evacuation tier reports via something like this the extraction structure. And it is provided a really great way to make sure the information is up to date. Again, because we use the wiki to do this and we decentralize the input of information, it's easy for users to update. The sheer mechanical difference, the mechanical advantage of editing a wiki page as opposed to getting a spreadsheet in an email, downloading it, editing it, resending it somewhere, or uploading it to some sort of document management system, has made our information much more valuable, and by proxy, our advisors more safe and secure. All right, moving on. I mentioned I was in emerging markets, and this I think is a more traditional example of what wikis are used for. This is just a space dedicated to our groups. We've got about 600 consultants, and we focus again on a lot of international work. There's our executive vice president there, James Horner. And we do some very basic things with this. We have 3 types of wiki pages: questions, discussions, and suggestions. People spin up a wiki page, and they're able to ask a question or start these discussions and engage in 360-degree sort of feedback loops with their various resources around the world, especially for a geographically disparate workforce. And this is extremely disparate. It become a great way to keep people engaged and keep them in the loop. Also, one of the more traditional, I think, wiki patterns out there is to take something like a newsletter. So this is the Emerging Markets newsletter that they've gone and just moved out of email and moved into a wiki page. And there's instantly more value, in our opinion, by doing this, very simply because we have the article here or something like that, and we have your ability to start a discussion, make a suggestion, ask a question very simply from the page itself. Finally, personal spaces. So those have become the most popular feature, I think, of our wiki. People use it for all sorts of things. I've sort of used it to replace Microsoft Word. I don't write anything anymore in a Word document unless I absolutely have to. All of my communications and all the deliverables I'm asked to produce or internal projects occur sort of within this environment, either within project spaces or my own personal space. I've also put my metrics up there, sort of opening the transparency, if you will. We've got people using widgets. There's my Twitter widget. There's my Doppler widget. I'm not totally sure how to pronounce that. And then one thing I wanted to show you here is that this idea of we have performance management. So I complete work against various goals. Every unit of work I produce is a wiki page, and I have certain goals. And using the content by label macro and labels, I'm able to align each of those pieces of work I produce manifested by a wiki page across this entire wiki against my goals. So at the end of the year, one, my performance is transparent. Two, I am sort of judged on the whole. People can say whether or not I deserve to get a raise or not, I suppose. And it makes it very easy for me to ensure the work I'm producing is aligned with something. Down here at the bottom, I have the no goal, if you will. And if this list was much longer, I would know that either my goals need to be changed or I need to be focusing more on work that aligns with my goals. So personal spaces have been used. This is just one used to do all sorts of things, and this is just one of them. Finally, the space that really, I think, got a lot of adoption and a lot of traction across the firm is something we call the clearinghouse. This is a discussion forum, essentially. But because we didn't have discussion forum software, didn't really want to buy any, we figured the wiki could get us there. And it has. This is a place where you can ask questions about anything. We don't try and really segregate the questions into different types. We don't try and send them out to people. It's a very open forum where all things can sort of exist together. The only sort of slicing and dicing of data we do is if people want to label things and to help generate this tag cloud on the right, they can. But otherwise, this has become really, really popular. If you're going to implement something like this, I highly recommend making sure you use implement the AutoWatch plugin specifically for this space. That way people get notified. It's just more like a traditional discussion forum. So those are just a few of the spaces we use, or a few of the spaces I wanted to show. To give you a quick look at our dashboard here, I'll scroll down on the left, and you can see we have a lot of spaces. And we manage space requests through Jira, actually, and administrators control who can look at spaces. Here's a look at our analytics right now. This is up to date as of yesterday, to kind of give you an idea of what kind of usage we get. And we really like this map too, which shows a lot of the different countries of where people are coming from, where the visits are emanating from. And just to show you right now, over the last month, about 47 different countries, roughly 19,000 visits or so. Moving back to the deck, a couple lessons learned. I won't go through all of these, and these are available on Jay and I's blog as well as through this deck. The one that I think is most important is the last one there of drinking your own Kool-Aid. We've seen lots of people, I think, purport to be advocates of the wiki within our organization and think it's a great idea, but they never are able to get the message across to the people that they are responsible for managing or leading because they don't adopt the wiki themselves. They don't, they continue to send out emails with attachments, or they don't necessarily update the wiki, but they say it's a great idea. So if you're going to do one thing, it's that if you go and want to implement a wiki and have it be adopted across your organization, you must first, I think, change yourself and shift yourself towards using it as a completely new way to do work. And that attitude will follow, I think, for the people that are that will be included in the adoption and the growth of the wiki across the organization. Finally, just a little reference information. Both Jay and I tweet, avid Twitter users. We also have a personal blog, e2oh.com or E2O. Corporate blog for BearingPoint, where Jay and I are somewhat frequent authors. newthinking.bearingpoint.com. There's the links for Contigix and Customware as well, if you're interested in learning more about them. And finally, those are our email addresses. And if my timing is correct, I believe that is it for the slide deck portion, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions and turn it back over to Morgan.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Actually, this is Bill here.
Bill, sorry.
We're gonna take the slides over. Thank you for that demo. I appreciate the live demo.
Sure.
And not death through PowerPoint. So thanks everybody for attending. We're gonna turn it while we have questions coming in here. We're gonna turn it over to Q&A. Just want to reiterate that first of all, thank you, Nate and Jay, and reiterate that you can feel free to contact us with any questions you have or ideas that you have. Here's our email addresses, and as mentioned before, we're recording this, so in the next day or two we'll have it up on atlassian.com/TV, so you can share this with your counterparts. And Nate, maybe you can add this to your list of accomplishments that weren't part of your quarterly goals. Hopefully it'll help you get a bonus.
Yeah.
And if you scroll down to the next slide, our next Voice of the Customer webinar, as I mentioned at the beginning, is on December 10th, and we'll have Joanna Thurman from Polycom talking about Jira, and you can view future webinars at the URL below, and also if you just subscribe to our blog on atlassian.com, I think /blogs, you can we'll blog about it, and you'll see all upcoming webinars as well as any recordings that we post. So with that, we have a few questions that have rolled in, and we'll take these in the order that they came in. So first of all, Melissa asks about the dashboard. I think at the very beginning of your demo, Nate, you talked about the dashboard and gave a snapshot of that. Did you do any customizations to that, or were you just modifying kind of the out-of-the-box dashboard?
We didn't do any customizations to the dashboard. The only things you may have seen was we just configured the site welcome message. We threw a tip macro in there, and also we switched the color scheme across the entire implementation to match BearingPoint's style guide. But nope, everything you see there was box.
Okay, and I think along the lines too, I think maybe it wasn't the dashboard that you first showed, but I think on the first page you showed there was a nice tag cloud there. I think there was a video in the middle, and below that was a tag cloud. And I had a couple questions about that tag cloud, how you created that, whether that was actually labels under there, or if that was something that you did custom.
No, so that was the Enterprise 2.0 capabilities group space. The video feature is out of the box. The tag cloud is generated by the popular labels macro. With the, I think it's the heat map switch thrown to true. And so what that looks at is it generates the tag cloud based on children pages of that particular page and the labels that are used on each of those pages.
Okay. Okay. Just scrolling through here. So one question on, I guess non-technical question, is around wiki patterns. There's a site, just for everyone's benefit, wikipatterns.com, where folks, it's actually a wiki itself where people can come and share patterns that work in terms of wiki adoption, successes and failures that they've had in anti-patterns. And there's a question around any wiki patterns that you might have used, or if you've ever even used that site.
Yeah, absolutely. We found this site very early on in our implementation. Consultants sort of being the art of creative copying, I suppose you could say. And yeah, we spoke with Stuart directly about a couple of them, and we definitely used them, and definitely also looked out for the anti-patterns. Some of the best ones, I think, that we really tried to install, or really tried to leverage, were is the viral wiki pattern, the 99-1 theory, which is not really much a pattern as much as it is a theory. Those are very great, and also the barn raising. Barn raising, Jay and I did more demos and sort of advocacy events for skeptics and fans alike across the organization than I care to remember. And that proved to be really effective. Barn raising, you have a meeting of 15, 20, 30 people, and you get one or two that really get it. That's all you need to continue to kind of decentralize the advocacy. Some of a pattern that I sort of suggested to Stuart and ended up blogging about on his blog is what we call wiki SEO, or wiki search engine optimization. And that is, when you think about your wiki and you think about creating content on your wiki, again, because it's a new way to do work, you need to think about the fact that the primary method by which people will find information is the search engine. Trying to construct an elaborate hierarchy, especially in such a large organization with so many different needs, the wiki, is really difficult to do. I wouldn't advise it. I'm kind of an anti-hierarchy kind of guy anyway. So when you're writing content, you need to think about how search engines look for that content. So don't use things like acronyms unless you absolutely have to. Spell out things. Use tags. Tags are really important. And again, for non-technical users who aren't maybe have never built a web page in their life, some of this is not really as intuitive as you might think. So we focus heavily on trying to develop a pattern around creating pages. So if I'm writing a deliverable, or if I'm writing a description of a meeting that I went to at BearingPoint, we write it as if a search engine might be looking for it. So links are important because the search engine leverages links and determine popularity. Spelling things correctly, spelling out acronyms, tagging it. That was one that has really proven to be has proven to be useful over the last couple months, as well as the information is really sprawled in all sorts of different directions.
Great. So sounds like maybe you want to contribute that one to the wiki, to the wiki patterns wiki.
Indeed I do. I need to do that.
Maybe I'll have to give you a demo sometime. I'm just kidding. So we actually had a couple questions around your discussion boards or forums and how you built those in Confluence, whether you did something custom or you just kind of used out-of-the-box functionality there.
Yeah, sure. The majority of the quote-unquote discussion forums that we have built are based on the clearinghouse, which is one of the spaces I showed you. And it's relatively small set of macros, and it combines, let me just pull up the markup here so I make sure I'm saying this correctly. A couple things. Content by label macro produces basically the list of ongoing topics. The add page macro is what creates the new pages, and also we use space templates pre-populated with a label, specifically the label that the content by label macro is looking for, and the AutoWatch plugin to make sure that people know what's going on. And what AutoWatch does is, if I ask a question in a wiki page, when someone comments on that page, any contributor to that page is automatically watching it. They will receive email notifications as things happen. But that's about it. And we feel that a lot of questions on the clearinghouse and the discussion forum, a lot of people have said, well, why didn't you just buy a discussion forum? And there are some great discussion forum products out there, undoubtedly, both available by open source or paying commercial licenses for it. But this sort of fits the bill, and it's in one place, if you will. It leverages Confluence's search engine, exposed to that. And the attribution, we had single sign-on already working. It just seemed like a logical sort of place to do it. we don't have a lot of people, I don't think, that would engage in sort of the more advanced features of the COTS discussion forum products. This has been sort of good enough. It didn't require any technical users to implement, and that was it. So it's out of the box, plus a few third-party plugins will give you a discussion forum.
That's interesting. So you basically put together the content by label, add page macro, the space using space templates. All of those are out of the box, and added the, I think it's a customware auto watch macro, and put those together to make a discussion forum.
Right. And then
Great.
we do to do things like seeing which things are which questions, give a list of all the unanswered questions. We use the checklist macro as well. Any of the basically the labels we use are question, and there's a label to determine whether it's answered or unanswered, and that helps to populate the different lists. But yeah, it's all out of the box. And interestingly enough about this is obviously the markup is available. So this was kind of meant to be the overarching discussion forum. People have copied this markup into their own spaces and created sort of subsets of discussion forums. So there's a discussion forum about project X, or a discussion forum about client Y, or something like that. So it puts that power into the hands of the users. So it's business users implementing solutions for their problems without a lot of cost and overhead to the IT department or corporate or anything like that.
That's great. Yeah, we find that people here internally learn by copying other people's pages, and so someone comes and sees your wiki markup, and they can just view that markup and copy that into their own space.
Yeah, we've had some interesting questions around the use of standardization or templates, and it's about finding that that middle ground between people who want to deal with kind of a blank slate, maybe go look at other people's pages and copy things in, and how much structure do you provide people in advance. We have tended to provide very little structure, very little guidance, and let sort of users, I think, experiment at their own pace and go in any direction they want. So what happens is now when people want to copy something, they have quite a wide range of sort of takes on information architecture, or what the wikis can do, or what the different plugins and macros provide in terms of capabilities. And it's really, it's almost exponential, kind of the level of creativity that comes out of this, which I don't think you would get in something like a sort of more traditional knowledge management approaches of uploading and downloading documents to folder structures and things like that.
Great. We had just a reminder to folks, we have maybe 5 more minutes, but wanted to encourage people, if they have questions, to type them into the question box. We have a couple more questions here. One is a technical question. I think you showed Google Analytics and how you're using that with Confluence. Is that, I guess the impression was that that's for only open, non-secured web pages. How did you kind of work around that with Google Analytics and Confluence being a secured web app?
Yeah, so we added it, basically, we added the Google Analytics script, there's the little JavaScript calls they have to the master template, essentially, for all pages within Confluence. And we run it securely, or we encrypt the traffic back and forth. But it works just like any other web page. And I was skeptical at first as well as to how that actually would happen. But just there are directions on Atlassian's website for modifying things like the footer or modifying the header. Same approach. Just drop that little script in, and it works. It works really well. Been really pleased with it.
Okay, great to know. That's a good tip. Let's see. Just looking at some of these questions here.
Nate, I understand that do you share this with any of your customers as well, your experience with Confluence, and have they adopted any of it?
We do indeed, and Confluence is an extremely popular wiki platform. Obviously, you guys know that. We run into customers that have implementations that maybe haven't taken it to kind of the level of of I don't know, penetration, if you will, that we have internally. We show them that, give them ideas. We've also done Confluence implementations for our clients. Some that come to mind is Yale University is a good one. They were doing a business process reengineering, very traditional consulting type of work. And instead of creating a bunch of Word documents and sending them back and forth with our client, we used Confluence Hosted, in fact, the SaaS offering from Atlassian, and used it with them to collaboratively develop some of their deliverables. So we use it as a tool internally. We like to take it to engagements as a tool, and we also recommend recommend additional uses for our clients that have it implemented already.
And Nate, I know you've been in some hairy situations. You know, you'd shared a story with me one time about being in the green zone in Baghdad, and you know, just out of curiosity, has the wiki been a lifesaver for you guys?
I would say that there have been incidents where the incidents that have occurred, unfortunate though they may be, where the information provided in the wiki has been crucial to decision making that concerns the personal security and safety of our advisors.
That sounds like a trained response to not give away classified information, Nate.
Well, hopefully, you know, I'm sure my boss is listening to this, and I'll still be employed.
Well, I think we're at about a quarter till right now, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're going to go ahead and wrap up right now. But I want to thank you guys again for sharing your story with us. It's a really great story, and we'll record it. If you want to share that with other folks, it will be up in the next couple of days on our webpage so that you can pass it around. And I want to encourage everyone to attend on December 10th, the Next Voice of the Customer webinar, and appreciate everyone's time today. And a round of applause for Nate and Jay.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Goodbye.